Hello guys and welcome again to my channel. In today's video we will talk about the Philidor position and I will show you three different defensive techniques that can be used to draw the Philidor position in three different situations. Now before we dive into more details, please if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell to get our latest videos. Now let's start. Here if it's black to move, the drawing technique is very easy. We can see here that the white king hasn't passed the 6th round yet. So now we simply go rook to a6 and we can see that the black king is cut off and there isn't really any progress to be made. And here if white tries to push his pawn, simply rook to a1 and the white king cannot escape the vertical checks. And this is because white has moved his pawn to e6. If the pawn was on e5, then the white king will have a shelter in front of his pawn. But as it is, white cannot escape the checks. For example, rook to c7 and we give a check and the white king cannot escape the checks, otherwise the pawn will fall. Now let's move to the second position where we will give white the move. And now white has the option to go king to f6. And here simply the 6th rank defense doesn't work because white can simply defend with his pawn and we are lost. So since here rook to b6 doesn't do anything, the question is, what is the black's move? How can we actually draw this position? Let's try, for example, to give a check on the f2 square. This is again losing because of king to e6. White is threatening checkmate now. King to f8, check, and king to g7. King to e7, and now rook to b1, going for side checks. But this simply isn't enough, simply because now e6, the rook gives a check, and now king to d6. Rook to b6 check, and king to d7. Rook to b7 check and king to c6, and this is lost. After rook to b1 we simply push, and now if the rook gives a check we simply attack the black rook and we are winning. The only way here to draw this position is to go rook to e2 and attack the pawn from behind. And you should definitely remember this move. And the idea here is that after king to e6, white is threatening checkmate, so now king to f8, check, and king to g7. And the point here is that white cannot go king to e7 or king to d7 because the pawn simply will fall. And now if white gives a check, this is simply meaningless. We simply go back and white has to repeat. And if king to d6, now we have this move king to f7. And now we are stopping the advance of the pawn and there is no progress to be made. Another idea that white can try, for example here, you can go rook to e8. And the point here is that now he is defending the pawn, so he might be able to move his king. But this also doesn't work because simply we go rook to a2 and now we are threatening to go for side checks. King to d7, rook to a7 check, king to c6, rook to a6 check, king to b5 attacking our rook, and now king to f7. And this is a simple draw after check take. This is just a draw. And here if white tries to go rook to d8 in order to block the side checks, we simply go back and there is no progress to be made. But the whole idea in this variation revolves around this move rook to e2. And you should definitely remember this move because it's very important to be able to draw this position. Let's now check the case of a knight pawn. And this situation is important simply because now the defense rook to g1 doesn't work. If black goes rook to g1, now rook to a6. White is threatening checkmate. If rook to f1, trying to block on the f8 square, simply a check. And after a trade, this is winning. The pawn is just going to march through and queen. So here instead black has to go king to f8 and after a check king to e7. And now here is the point, rook to g8. White is defending the pawn, which means that white is threatening to go king to h7. And the difference between this position and the previous one is that now the black king is cut off on the long side of the board. The black king needs to be on the other side in order to stop the advancement of the white king. So here for example after rook to g2, king to h7, king to f7, g6, king to e7, and now rook to a8. We are threatening to push our pawn and go king to g8. So here after rook to h2, king to g8, rook to g2, g7. And this is an easy win in Lucena position. White will simply go rook to f1 and cut off the black king, and then the technique is very easy. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Lucina position, you can check out our previous video in which we explained this exact position in more detail. So now since black cannot go rook to g1, how can he actually hold the draw? And here comes our third defensive technique. Black will go rook to a1. And the point here is that black wants to go rook to e8 and defend passively on the 8 rank. And this is actually the only way to hold this position. After rook to b6, threatening checkmate, rook to a8. And now believe it or not, there is nothing that white can do. If white ever leaves the 6th rank, rook to b7, black just gives a check, and now the white king is cut off. This is an easy draw. And here, if for example white goes king to h6, trying to push his pawn, now we simply stay on the 8 rank. After, for example, this is a simple draw. You just stay on the 8 rank and there is no way to make any progress. But here white can be a little bit tricky. He can go rook to b7. Of course, we stay on the 8 rank. There is nothing to do. And now after a check, here we have to be careful. If you go king to f8, you are lost, because you're going to give way to the white king, and the white king will penetrate the position. For example, king to f8, king to h7, and this is simply lost. White now is threatening rook to g8, and this is the end. But of course, here we don't go king to f8, we simply go king to h8, and this is a draw. There is nothing that white can do. We'll just repeat the position, and there is nothing to be done. Let's now check our last example and try to use this technique that we have learned. Here both sides have pawns and it's black to move. So let's see what black can do. For example, if black goes a6, trying to hold on to his pawn, this is a bad move and it is losing. White will simply go rook to f7 and then take the pawn with his rook. And if you trade, this is a losing king and pawn endgame. If you go back to c1, simply king to g7, rook to g1 check, white blocks with his rook. And now the white king has penetrated the position and this is lost. So what can we actually do here? Let's say for example we give a check with the rook. This is also losing, because now after king take, rook to f4 staying behind the pawn, rook to b8 check, king to d7, now rook to f8. And here we see the same problem that we saw in the last example. The black king wants to be on the short side of the board, and then we should use our rook to give side checks to the white king. But the position as it is lost. After rook to f1, king to g7, king to e7, and f6 check, and this is lost. So now we saw that rook to a6 doesn't work, and also rook to g4 check doesn't work. Let's see, for example, if we try to stay behind the pawn. This is very natural, but again, it is losing. After king capture on f6, rook to f2, rook to b8 check, king to d7, rook to f8, and this is the same position that we just saw, and it's losing. So how can we actually draw this position? Here, the only drawing move is to immediately transfer the black king to the short side. And that's why we should go king to f8. Now if white gives a check, this doesn't do anything, simply king to e7, and white has to repeat. And if white takes, threatening checkmate next, we simply go king to g8, and after a check, now king to h7. And now we can see the point, our king is perfectly placed on the short side of the board, and we can use our rook if necessary to give side checks. For example, here if king to e6, we simply keep on checking the white king, and there is no way to avoid the side checks. So here white shouldn't check the pawn. Let's see, for example, if he goes rook to b6. Now simply rook to f4, staying behind the pawn. Now if rook take, king to g8, rook to b6, and now simply rook to g4 check. If king to h5, we simply go back, and white has no way to make any progress. So here instead white takes with the king. Now mate is threatened again, so king to g8, rook to b8 check, and king to h7. Rook to f8, guarding the white pawn. Rook to f1 staying behind the pawn. King to e6, and now king to g7, tracking the rook. And if for example rook to a8, now we simply give a check, and the white king cannot escape from these vertical checks. Okay guys, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them down below in the comment section, and I will do my best to answer all of them. Also, if you're not subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell to get our latest updates. Thank you guys for watching and see you in the next one.